Good evening, everybody. What has happened? Oh, we're getting. I have something to adjust, so we don't have this feedback. Something to adjust, so we don't have this feedback. I'm calling up my techie. How do I turn off the?
You're on computer.
It is music. You mean? Yeah. So where do I do the music? How do I turn off the? Yeah. Yes, I've muted my Zoom.
Shall just turn this volume down.
Yes, the YouTube that's coming through. I haven't muted that. I think I'm in.
Next thing we do
I don't want to hear the feedback.
Yeah. I think I managed to mute. Oh no, it's still there. I've muted it on YouTube. It's muted on Zoom.
Yes.
In theory, it should be okay. Can I leave you on the phone and I'll start again? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, we're going to start again. And I think it's still not working. But if you think it sounds good, we'll go ahead. Okay. Well, good evening again and welcome. It's a terrific audience. Thank you for coming. It shows that Kendal as a community is very civically engaged. Ted will tell you how to deal with that feedback. I'm co-president with my colleague here, Megan, of the League of Women Voters of Tompkins County. And we're your host tonight. And there were several league members in the audience, and I thought they should stand up so you can see who they all are. So Claire and Kathy and Jean and who else? Alicia's at the back. Okay, I think, oh, and Peter's a member as well. Peter is an important family member. And Barney at the back. Okay. We're a non-partisan organization committed to defending democracy and empowering voters by bringing you the most up-to-date information available on national, state, and local elections and issues of concern to voters. We encourage informed and active participation of citizens in government, work to increase understanding of major policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Membership is open to anyone of any gender who is 16 years of age and older. And similarly, anyone of 16 years and older may register to vote or pre-register to vote. So that the day they turn 18, if the election is the next day, register and can vote. Tell your grandchildren. We believe diversity, equity, and inclusion are priorities shaping our future. We also believe it's important to recognize the history of our local community and to acknowledge that Tompkins County is located on the traditional homelands of the Gayakono, members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations who have a historic and contemporary presence on our land. We recognize their painful history of dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of Gayakono people, past, present, and future, to our community. Tonight, each candidate has 3 minutes to make an opening statement and then 1 minute to ask each question that is submitted. Now, each question will be asked of both candidates. We have been sorting through the questions to make sure they're not addressed to one candidate and not the other. Many questions are on the same topic, and so only one question will be asked and they'll be merged together. So we will do our best to cover everything that you're asking. And to ask all the questions. We've got a lot that have been handed in tonight. We had a lot online over the past week and yesterday and today. So it's an important election of great interest. And if you have a question written out and nobody comes to get it, just bring it up and give it to Megan. Unless we finish questions sooner, the last question will be asked no later than 8:45, and the candidates will be asked to make their final statements after that question. I'm requesting all to be respectful of everyone who is here tonight, both the candidates, the audience, and to neither heckle nor applaud the candidates and what they say. So now we're turning over to our candidates. Meloney on my immediate left, Linda on my far left. And Meloney is making her opening statement first. And at the other end, Linda will do her closing statement first. So, Meloney.
Just want to test the microphone because I've not done this before. Okay. everyone can hear me. Hi, everyone. My name is Meloney McMurry. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Kendal for hosting this forum. It's great to see all of you tonight. Thank you for being here as well. I've lived in Cayuga Heights since 2011, but my connection to the village started in 1995 when I began coming here to visit my then boyfriend, now husband, Stanley, while we were both in college. I have deep experience in local government. After getting a law degree and a master's degree of urban planning, I worked as a real estate and land use attorney in New York City for the better part of a decade. When my husband and I decided to step away from our busy careers and focus on family, we moved back to Cayuga Heights so that our children could be down the street from their grandparents and enjoy the same childhood that he did. I wanted to contribute to my new community, so I joined the Village Planning Board and co-founded the Bike Ped Committee, which wrote the village's first 2 successful federal grants for new sidewalks as safe routes to school. I moved to the Board of Trustees, where I served for 5.5 years and focused on updating our local laws to make them clearer and more accessible to residents. As deputy mayor, I served on the administrative, HR, and public safety committees, and as chair of the policy committee of the Ithaca Tompkins County Transportation Council, where I worked with other municipal leaders to support local transportation initiatives. I'm running for mayor because I believe in local government. It's where I feel I can make the most significant contributions to my community. But from my time on the planning board and as a trustee, I know that our government can be better and do better with a renewed focus on open communication, transparency, sustainable infrastructure investment, and community connection. I've heard from many of our residents that they feel in the dark about what and how decisions are made at Marcham Hall. I will put communication at the center of everything we do. I'll have an office at Marcham Hall and regular weekly office hours. I'll also host department open houses so taxpayers can learn what our village workforce is up to on their behalf. And I'll improve our website and newsletter to provide relevant and timely updates. I'll also make sure that we focus on sustainable infrastructure that matters to our residents. We need to prioritize our streets. I'll fix the broken sidewalks and potholes in the roads and open our streets to alternative modes of transportation by adding bike lanes, crosswalks, and closing the gaps in our sidewalk wherever possible. I'll work with our neighboring municipalities to collaborate on projects to scale up their impact and reduce their costs to the village. Finally, I believe that a significant part of my job as mayor is being a cheerleader for our community. I want to create opportunities to come together, celebrate our neighborhood, and connect with each other. It would be an honor for me to represent our wonderful village as mayor of Cayuga Heights.
Thank you, Melanie. Linda, over to you.
Okay. I've never done this before either, so hopefully you can hear me. Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing and moderating this forum, and to Kendal for hosting us tonight. They're providing a very valuable opportunity for you to learn more about us and through your questions to determine who you think would be the better mayor. I hope you also gain an appreciation for how well your village is running. I think it's important to convey how I view the role of the mayor. Think of an orchestra with the mayor as the conductor, the staff as the musicians, and the residents as the audience. Both are important to make music. The conductor doesn't play an instrument, but they need to know the individual scores and how they fit together. It's also necessary to have a wide repertoire to satisfy the tastes of the audience. I would like to give you 2 examples of how we have produced beautiful music for you. The replacement of our street lights with LEDs is one of my proudest achievements. I convinced the Board of Trustees to approve this project based on the amount of money we would save once we had paid for the purchase and installation. These lights were installed in 2020, And by 2030, we will have recouped our investment from savings from our electricity. Saving money is always a good thing. No longer needing to rely on NYSEG for maintenance is a definite plus. But for me, reducing our carbon footprint was the primary motivation. The second example relates to our greatest village asset. I spend at least a quarter of my time on matters relating to the wastewater treatment plant. It is both a resource and a tremendous responsibility. It also represents a major environmental issue. Cayuga Heights is a precious resource for us all. It would be unconscionable to contaminate it. 7 months before I became mayor, I'm sorry, not before, after I became mayor, the DEC cited us for 20 violations. We were not fined, but we were told to remedy the situation without delay. That began a project which continues to this day and has cost over $13 million. We still need to spend another $1.5 million in the coming year to complete those necessary renovations. I am excited that you are all here for this important discussion. I believe there is a real difference between our experience levels, and I hope to highlight those differences for you. Thank you.
The first question will now go to Linda. Several questions under a similar heading. What are your top priorities for the village in 2025 and 2026? And what qualities or experience best enable you to carry out these priorities? And what are the most important items on the agenda of the village in 2024?
So that's a lot of questions. I think the most important projects facing the village have to do with the wastewater treatment plant. Like I said in my opening remarks, is a very important resource, not just for us, but for other communities. We also serve the villages of Lansing and the village of Lansing and the town of Lansing, also parts of the town of Ithaca and Dryden. Sewage is something most people don't want to think about, but you can't run a municipality without being able to take care of it. So infrastructure in general, but the wastewater treatment plant in particular, I think are the things that I think are the most important.
So my top priorities in 2025 and 26 start with communication and transparency. As I said in my opening statement, that is an issue that would be at the heart of my administration. Linda has made reference to the work that's been ongoing at the wastewater treatment plant, certainly critical infrastructure and critical upgrades that nobody knows about. As I've been talking to residents in my campaign, this is a project that people are unaware of. As the largest infrastructure investment in our village history, that's the type of project I would make sure the community was kept informed.
Okay, the next question you start with first, Meloney, and this regards leadership styles. How would you describe your leadership style, and how will you work with staff, trustees, and community members?
Again, I think key is communication, connection, and transparency. My leadership style is about bringing diverse perspectives together to try to find a common solution. You have to listen first and then work with those who may disagree with you to come to an agreement. What was the rest of the question? Sorry. Leadership style. Oh, and how I work with the trustees. I know all of the trustees. I've worked with them before. I have longstanding and deep respect for our village staff and established relationships with them. I don't anticipate having any trouble working cooperatively with all of them.
Linda.
So my leadership style basically rests on consensus. I try really hard. We do sometimes disagree, and we try really hard to respect one another. Most people don't tune into the Board of Trustees meetings, but if you did, you would see robust discussion and you would see respect for everybody, and everybody feels like they can participate. I'm very proud of the fact that there are very few votes that we take that are not unanimous. I guess I disagree with Meloney to some degree about people not knowing what we're doing. We made a concerted effort to communicate through the e-news blast and our website. But people are busy, and unless there's something in particular that somebody cares about, they don't pay a whole lot of attention. Thank you.
What do you think? This is for you to start with, Linda. Sorry. What do you think are the most important aspects of the roles of the village trustees?
The trustees are extremely important. Since I became mayor, we have taken on so many new projects. And it used to be that the mayor did almost everything, and that is no longer the case. I rely heavily on the trustees. I have an excellent working relationship with all of them. They have unanimously supported my reelection. And I got to the point where it was embarrassing that it was a volunteer position. So we actually now pay them a very small amount each year. They're a treasure. One of the things about having this contested election is the ability to allow me to tell you how well your village is run and how lucky everyone is to have the people, both staff and volunteers, working for you. Thank you.
So the mayor is really one of the trustees. We work together as effectively the village legislature. But as Linda notes, the mayor is about one person, and we really rely on the trustees and their role on the committees such as Public Works, Finance. What are some of our committees? To do the research and gather the facts so that by the time we come to the Board of Trustees to make a decision, we have the information we need. So obviously the role of the trustees is critical. I will say that I respect the current trustees. They're all smart, dedicated public servants. I'm not running against any of them. And since I have 10 seconds left, I will leave it there.
Okay. Term limits. Should there be term limits for the positions of mayor and trustees? And how long should these be and why? Meloney, you start.
Sure. So I understand why many mayors have term limits. Linda's argument that because she is mayor, she should remain mayor is somewhat circular, and the kind of thinking that probably explains why term limits are in place in many municipalities. However, I think in the past, it has been hard to recruit trustees and more importantly, mayors. Linda herself was appointed to fill a vacancy back in 2016. So it's a hard, although it would be beneficial, I think in terms of allowing fresh voices and fresh perspectives to come in, it would be a hard thing to maintain in a village of this size, just in terms of our ability to recruit folks to serve on the board.
So obviously I don't want term limits, or I don't know what they would be. I agree with Melanie that it's very difficult to recruit people. And there's actually a history in the village of mayors having very long terms, much longer than 8 years. There is value in experience, and there is value in having new people coming on the board. Since I've been mayor, we've had a number of people get off the board, including Melanie, and we've had the ability to recruit new people over the years. It is not easy to find people who have the interest and the time to do it. So I don't think in a village this size, the term limits would be a good idea.
Melanie, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Everyone here, I think, is smart enough to realize that new leadership comes along in every organization at some point, and that the organization doesn't just survive, it thrives. I think we can also recognize that it's not often the current leadership that realizes when it's time for a change.
Linda, I think you're doing the next question first. And this concerns traffic. Traffic problems in the village are increasing. A scheme using roundabouts or traffic circles was proposed some years ago, but was discarded as being too expensive. Do you have any plans for making it easier for cars to turn left at all the junctions between Triphammer and Henshaw Road at community corners, in particular where Upland and Triphammer roads merge? There's another one who's suggesting a stoplight at the intersection of North Triphammer and the entry road to Kendal, which I agree is another problem if you want to turn left. Also, in relation to the increased traffic, have you considered any noise abatement ideas, such as reduced speed limits, particularly on Triphammer Road?
So it's incorrect to say that we have discarded the traffic study that we did. We did put it on the shelf, and the reason we did that was because right after we had the study done, Cornell decided that they were going to significantly increase the dorms on North Campus. And Rainick, the development over at the golf course, was also proposed. Rainick is probably not going to happen, and the dorms are now done, and we actually are planning on contacting the company that did the traffic study and go back and revisit it and decide, what we need to do. Because I totally agree that the traffic in the village, especially around community corners, is difficult. There are roundabouts in that plan, and there are also other ways of doing it. I actually think we ought to talk about the stoplight as a separate question. Thank you.
Meloney.
When I was on the planning board, looking at the new medical office building in Community Corners, we requested a traffic study of the two major intersections coming in there. And it came as no surprise that the intersections were shown to be failing, but the wait times were in excess of what was reasonable. So we commissioned the study that Linda just referenced, and I'm glad to hear that it is still under consideration. There's a lot of infrastructure money out there right now. There are opportunities for grants to fund projects like this. I think this project presents a particularly good opportunity to work with adjacent municipalities, whether it be Lansing, the town, ideally Cornell, if that was a possibility, to scale up the project and really take advantage of the opportunity to look at the comprehensive streetscape, which could include pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and could take us as far as Lansing or down into the city. And it says stop. Sorry, I love talking about traffic.
Okay, the next questions, and you will start this mainly, concern costs. And there are several of them. There's one here that's totally different to all the others. How do you propose to control the spiraling costs of health insurance for village staff and their families? Melanie, that's your start.
I know that we have looked into a variety of health insurance plans for our village staff. There was a transition, I think it was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now, from the original health insurance that they were on to a gold plan, which allowed us to reduce both premiums and out-of-pocket expenses. It was very controversial among the staff themselves, and it was difficult to convince them of the benefits of the structure, which was somewhat complicated. In the end, they were convinced after piloting the program with the non-bargaining units, the ones who are not in a union, and the benefits to those folks convinced the bargaining units that it would be a benefit to them as well. So I think that the hurdle is always going to be how do you communicate the benefits to the staff, keep morale high, and still ensure that you can make these kinds of transitions without disruption.
Thank you. So I almost think that this was a plant. Restructuring our healthcare premiums was a signature accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. It did take a lot of talking, and we did start with the non-bargaining staff. The idea, originally, they all had what's called a PPO plan, the absolute Cadillac of everything. And premiums kept on going up to the point where it was becoming unsustainable. I went and looked at all the different plans and did an analysis and decided that we could move everybody to the gold plan. And when you have a gold plan, you are allowed as a municipality to subsidize the out-of-pocket expenses. So that's what we did. And we promised everybody, and we've kept that promise, that we would never, nobody that is there would ever have to pay any more than they had paid on the gold plan. Because the gold plan has significant deductions, but the village takes actually pays them now, and we're saving $50,000 to $60,000 a year having done that.
That's okay. We both know time.
I like traffic.
Now, there's one number on village costs. What do you feel, and this to you, Linda, to start with, what do you feel about the current level of spending in the village to maintain services? what would you cut? No, would you cut or increase spending? Cut or increase staff positions in relation to that spending increase or cut?
So it's very difficult on everyone if you have to cut things, services, people. So we try really hard not to do that. And obviously you don't want to raise property taxes on people any more than you absolutely have to, because people cannot then afford where they're living. Instead, we look for different ways to find money. And one of the ways we found it was with a new investment vehicle called NY Class. We have received over $182,000 in interest since the middle of 2021. This is money that we don't have to get from property taxes, and it's also means that we don't have to cut anything. We've actually added a policeman and sort of added about a half a deputy clerk.
No.
I agree that Christy Renenkamp, our deputy treasurer, did a great job in identifying NY Class as an investment venue. So I just want to recognize her efforts on that. We have a $3 million fund balance, which to my mind is more than we need to be holding in the bank. This money should be put to work for our residents. A few years ago, when I was on the board of trustees, we were criticized in our annual external audit for having too large a fund balance, yet we still have almost 4 times the recommended minimum amount. Residents pay taxes in exchange for services. The money should be used to pave the roads, build bike lanes, always my favorite, improve our signage, and make our village reflect the pride that we feel in living here.
So obviously, fund balance is something, it's basically how much we've saved. It's our savings account. And villages get in trouble easily if they rely on fund balance to balance their spending. We have one of the best credit ratings in the state. Our fiscal stress level is 0. That means that if we want to go into and borrow money, we get better interest rates and things like that. I'll stop.
All right. This question is related. Linda, you're first. Have you ever considered disbanding the village and simply becoming part of the town of Ithaca? How much would that save the average family in taxes? What economies of scale would that achieve? And what services to village residents would be scaled back or lost?
Especially considering I have never in my life considered merging with the town of Ithaca. I think we do a much better job fiscally than they do. We're very mean and lean. They spend money like they have a lot. I think our services are better. Fire, police, the DPW, our roads are better maintained in the wintertime. I honestly haven't analyzed it, so I don't know what the savings would be, but my gut is that it would absolutely not be worth it.
Here's something Linda and I agree on. The benefits of the services that we have in the village certainly more than make up for the cost, to my mind. Our fire department, our police department, our DPW are all the envy of our neighbors. Any of you who have tried to drive in a snowstorm, you can see the village boundary in the snow because our plows are out there ahead of the towns. So in terms of the services that we would be sacrificing, I think it would be felt right away. And I don't think anyone would benefit from that on a level that was that could be justified by whatever savings we would have in taxes.
Thank you. If our property tax assessments are going up by possibly as much as 20%, what will happen to our tax bills in the next few years? Meloney.
I had actually understood that they would be going up by about 25%, which is a pretty incredible number to contemplate. I think it would be appropriate to correspondingly cut the tax rate in order to not increase the tax burden on homeowners. As we've discussed, the village is in a good financial position, and I see no need to raise taxes at this point.
So I pretty much anticipated this question just because of the extraordinary increase in assessments that has been in the news. Let me first clarify that those assessments are not going to be reflected in this year's tax bill. It will be next year's tax bill. I went back and looked at what the assessment have been while I was mayor. And last year, the assessment went up a little over 9.5%. The lowest was less than 1%, and the average was just about 4%. The tax rate, most people maybe don't understand the fact that it is the assessment times the tax rate that give you your property taxes. And so Melody is correct. If we have huge increases in assessments, we don't have to have huge increases in the tax rate, but that still doesn't mean that your taxes haven't gone up. And we're very cognizant of that.
Thank you. Now we're going to switch over to potential development in the village. How would you help to steer development projects like the development of the country club site, which I understand from Linda is not going ahead? What is the best way for village leadership to come up with development plans that would make sense and work together with all stakeholders? And that would be for any development. So, Meloney.
I believe that the type of proposal that we most recently saw for the country club property, which included townhouses, hotel, and golf club, was conceptually sound. You need to pay attention to scale and make sure that we don't put too much pressure on our infrastructure with developments such as these, particularly on our roads in terms of traffic. But I do think we need to diversify our housing stock to allow empty nesters to remain in the village or young couples to buy starter homes here. And that denser housing near our commercial core in community corners makes sense in terms of creating a walkable center and providing built-in demand for local retail. I think a project such as this also provides an excellent opportunity to collaborate with the town of Ithaca to distribute density in a way that would make sense for all of us.
So it was a real disappointment that Sean Whitaker seems to have lost interest in developing the golf course. We were working very closely with him and his associates to try to come up with a very reasonable development. He was very open to helping mitigate traffic consequences. I think it just got to be too much, and maybe it was going to be more expensive. We really don't know. He just stopped talking to us. I don't disagree with Melanie about needing more density. A lot of people have double lots. And a lot of what's happening are people wanting to subdivide. We are fortunate in this village that we have an excellent planning board that when somebody wants to do that, that it is done carefully and in keeping with the character of the village.
The next question is related and concerns low-income housing. The need for more affordable housing is pressing throughout the county. What do you think the village should do to make more affordable housing and even low-income housing available in the village?
So I'm not at all against having low-income housing in the village, but we need to have developers that are willing to do it. And so far, nobody has approached us. But there is another way that I think I've helped contribute to, and that is our very strict Airbnb laws. One of the things that was happening was that we have, I think, 20% of the properties have accessory apartments. And historically, they have been, they have housed graduate students, young faculty, and what was happening with Airbnb was that these were disappearing. They were becoming Airbnb, not long-term rentals. And so I think one of the ways we've helped ease the density a little bit is through the fact that it's no longer attractive to actually convert your apartments to that.
Okay, there we go. I will agree that our law on short-term rentals, which was the first in the area to be written, is a good one. I wrote it. So it's enough to let owners subsidize their vacations by renting out their house while they're away, or take advantage of Cornell weekends to get a little extra income, but it's not enough, as Linda notes, to encourage corporate owners to buy up houses for Airbnbs, which would be, I think, very problematic in terms of driving up housing costs in the region and just in terms of village character. I would take a different approach to enforcement than the current administration. I'm okay with permits, but I think log books that have to be reviewed by the clerk on an annual basis uses a lot of unnecessary administrative resources, and hiring a firm to conduct forensic data analysis could be considered not just government overreach, but a large waste of taxpayer money.
Thank you. Linda.
So one of the aspects of our Airbnb laws is the restriction. You can only rent for 14 days in a calendar year if you are not available, and 28 days if you are. The logs are there to help enforce those provisions of the law. So we think they're quite necessary, and we're not sure people are actually being honest, but it is a way to sort of help.
Thank you. This refers to something you mentioned in earlier. The introduction of LED lights may have reduced use of electricity, but it has resulted in some places in appalling nighttime light pollution with serious impacts on the flying nightlife. Will you consider reducing the brightness levels of the lights, and also consider introducing the better colored LED lights that are more friendly to flying nightlife?
So, like with most decisions that we are forced to make, there are trade-offs. And we talked some about having the cooler LEDs We were told that from an energy point of view, they were not more efficient and they were much more difficult to come by at that point in time. I have had complaints about the LEDs destroying the night sky, but I think one of the reasons why they look so bright is because the old NICEAG lights were so bad. And the LEDs actually, the way that they are designed is to keep the light going down. We do reduce the intensity of the lights in the wintertime because with snow on the ground, you don't need as many. But the other thing you have to think about is the reason for the lights, which is to allow people to be able to walk around safely at night. So it is a trade-off, and some people are not happy with it.
Again, an area where Linda and I agree. I think the LED streetlights project was very beneficial to our community. I know certainly on my street alone, there had been many streetlights that had been out for years. So giving the village control over our streetlights and the ability to simply replace the bulbs and, as Linda notes, actually adjust the level of the lighting has been a huge benefit. I do recognize that for some folks who were used to the darker nature of our village streets before the lights were replaced, may have found the change jarring. But I think overall, I'm a person who focuses on pedestrian safety. Streetlights are key to that. And as a mother, I think it's important that we be able to see people walking on our sidewalks.
Thank you. This is a combination of questions. Do you really want village properties to continue to be as Olmsted first envisaged? Sweeping carpets of greens surrounded by tasteful flower beds. Maintenance of these carpets of green requires weed killer and fertilizer, which end up eventually running off into Cayuga Lake. Please state your vision and priorities on the topic of lawn maintenance, addressing issues of aesthetics, environmental impact and enforcement, as well as any changes required to village laws and codes. And bearing in mind our meadows, what are they called? Pollinator meadows. Thank you. Meloney.
Property maintenance has been a hot topic of late. I would say, for starters, that I appreciate that a committee was recently formed to clarify our property maintenance law itself, to make it easier to enforce. I would like to see meadow landscaping and pollinator gardens included in what's permitted and not just the vast green carpet as described. I did bring this up briefly as a trustee, but at the time, the board was not ready to consider it. I think they're moving in that direction now. A difference I would take is in terms of enforcement. For starters, I think the village should be rewarding good behavior around property maintenance as well as enforcing against bad behavior. It would be great to have pride of place awards, for example, to highlight excellent examples of what we want to see in property maintenance. The current approach to enforcement is fairly punitive. If people put out their trash too early or they're brushed on the wrong day, a sign appears in their front yard to let them know that they have disobeyed the law, which is both aesthetically and temperamentally difficult to deal with.
So we have recently developed a property maintenance task force. And I was pleasantly surprised by the number of people who actually wanted to be on this task force. I limited it to 9 people just because you get too big, you don't do anything. And it's been very interesting because I tried really hard to recruit a variety of people, gardeners, that meticulously take care of their lawn. I didn't realize it at the time, but one of the people that is on the task force has an incredible meadow in her backyard. We just sort of came to a consensus, and I sent it to Randy to make into a law. And you should all come to the next board meeting in which we are going to present it and discuss it. So I invite you all to it.
No, it's all right. Sorry. Deer control has been a contentious issue in the village in the past. What is your policy on deer control? Would you continue the annual culling, modify it, or end it? And what will you do about deer tick control?
I think that it's incredibly important to continue the culling of the deer. My background is in ecology, and we are the top predator. Without somebody controlling the deer population, it will go easily back up to what it was when Kate Supron was the mayor. We actually did an experiment because we couldn't have the people that we normally have come in 2020 because of COVID. And the population rebounded significantly. So I feel very strongly about continuing the culling, and we do it with professionals. We've never had a deer escape, and we've never had an accident. And as far as deer ticks, I think that they are becoming more of an issue because there are more things than just Lyme that they now carry.
No.
Someday we're gonna figure this thing out.
I suggest you just leave it on.
I agree with Linda that our deer program is critical. It's something that I know that was very controversial at the time that it was passed. But I think the majority of village residents have since come to see the benefit of it. The experiment that Linda talked about during the pandemic was quite glaring. I know when I moved to the village in 2011, there were about 9 deer who just lived in our backyards. My kid actually thought that they were our pets because they were always there. And after the management program started, they were far reduced. In the pandemic, they came rolling back. They were back in the woods, sleeping there every morning. So we can see that it doesn't take long for the deer to make their return. Management is important and should be ongoing.
This is one question totally out of the blue. What is your vision for Sunset Park? Meloney.
Sure. I love Sunset Park. I've always loved Sunset Park. My brother-in-law got engaged there. My kids learned to ride their bikes there. We watch the fireworks there and have an annual last day of school picnic. It's truly one of my favorite places in the village. But I do think it's been sadly neglected over the last decade, and it needs a little love. I was actually the one who applied for the first $5,000 grant to repoint the stonework, and would have tried to apply for a second, but the pandemic hit. So that was taken care of after I left the trustees. And I think we need to continue projects on that scale. Probably replacing the broken bollards would be the next one. However, I don't think we need a huge grant-funded renovation that would increase the amount of paving in the park. I think people love the park the way it is. We just need to give it the attention it deserves.
So, earlier we were talking about the importance of trustees. And I want to shout out to Jim Marshall, who basically spearheaded trying to find money to do things in the Sunset Park. We did apply for a grant that would have funded 75% of the renovations, but we did not get it. The money went to Cass Park, which was appropriate, actually. One of the things we had an open house in which we had invited everybody and had a very good turnout. I agree with Meloney that Sunset Park is a real treasure that many people in the village appreciate. We found out that they really don't want much change. What they want is it to be well taken care of. And we are taking that into consideration in our budget that's ongoing.
Thank you. Communications. What do you think is the best way to communicate with residents? Do you think community connections could be improved? And what will be your strategy for dealing with property owners who do not comply with village laws and regulations, particularly if they are your friends? Is this you, Linda, first? Is Meloney?
These seem like two unrelated questions. Do you mind if I ask you to repeat them?
Well, yeah, they're on communications and I've merged them together. If you take a little longer, Kay won't mind. If they run over time, that's okay. Yes. What do you think is the best way to communicate with residents?
Thank you.
Do you think community connections could be improved? And what will be your strategy for dealing with property owners who do not comply with village laws and regulations, particularly when they're your friends?
I'll start with communication. I think the most important aspect of good communication is that it comes in a variety of forms. As discussed, I intend to have an office at Marcham Hall. I think Linda is the first mayor in history who has not held an office at Marcham Hall. That I want to be available not only to the residents, but also to the staff on a regular basis. And I would hold regular office hours so that folks could know where to find me and come whenever they wanted without making an appointment. But on top of that, I think we could improve our website. I think our e-newsletter could be greatly improved to focus on the issues that matter and remove a lot of the clutter that tends to be in there that isn't directly relevant to residents. And community connection is something I could go on about at length. Fortunately, I just wrote a blog post on it. So if you go to my website, McMurry.com, you'll find all my ideas there.
So this is an area where I sort of disagree. We used American Rescue funds to redesign our website. We use more of those funds to get state-of-the-art video equipment so that all of our board meetings could be Zoomed. I think the e-news blast is quite informative. I wish more people would use it, but it's quite informative. And we put as much as we can on the website itself. So I think from that perspective, we're actually doing quite well. In terms of the other, Brent Parks is the one who gets to make if somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, so that the mayor really is insulated from that. Thank goodness.
Thank you. how do you propose to prepare the village for resilience given climate change?
So climate change is coming, or it already is, it's already here. One of the projects that we just completed a year and a half ago was what is called right sizing of culverts. And this was a drainage project on Cayuga Heights Road in which we increased the size of the culverts so that we could accommodate the increasing high intensity rainstorms and snow melts. It has worked extremely well. We've had people that used to be flooded on a regular basis and they are not. So that is one way that we can help with the resilience. Luckily, we don't have any floodplain. We're the only community in Tompkins County that does not have an area in the flood maps. So I'll stop here.
Meloney.
Transportation is the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. That is one of the reasons that sustainable transportation infrastructure has been such an important focus for me. If we make our streets accessible to alternative modes of transportation beyond private vehicles, we are doing much to address the issue of climate change. There are no bike lanes in the village. I would introduce bike lanes. I would encourage use of transit, and I would improve our sidewalks to fill any gaps and fix any broken sidewalks so that pedestrian mobility is as smooth as possible.
Now, I think we're coming up to the end of our, sorry.
I just wanted to comment on something that Meloney just said. She's really pushes bike paths. Our streets are not wide enough for bike paths on the streets. And I don't know where she would get the real estate in order to be able to do them.
Yes, Meloney.
Much like real estate inside Marcham Hall, perhaps I'm more creative as a city dweller, but I don't think it would actually be difficult to identify real estate for bike lanes, particularly on some of our larger roads, such as Trip Hammer and Pleasant Grove. I think even with the road widths the way they are, I think there would be a way to restripe them in order to accommodate bike lanes. I also think you could have bikeways such as they have down in the city where bicycles share the traffic lanes with cars, but through signage and pavement markings, you indicate their presence, and that makes them safer for everyone.
Now, a couple of people in the audience have left. I was anticipating us continuing until nothing. Perhaps a show of hands if you want to finish earlier. Okay.
I'm having so much fun.
All right. Let me find one last question. I think we'll go to this one. Both mayor and trustees are now paid. How much time should they spend working for the village? And you're first, Lisa.
So the mayor is I ask for 15 hours a week. I certainly work more than that. It is essentially a half-time job. I think it would be very difficult to have another job unless it was only half-time and very flexible. I actually tried to do some volunteer work, doing taxes for people, 3 times a week for 3 hours at a time. And after being there for a couple of years, I realized I couldn't do it, because I just did not have the time. The trustees, it's very difficult to gauge. They all come to the board meetings, they chair committees or members of committees. I think we pay them $4,500 a year. Well worth it.
I apologize, I'm just getting a question from a colleague.
I think they should go back to the question about having a stop sign out, or stoplight outside of Kendal, but she didn't answer, but it's a whole separate question.
Oh, okay.
Should I respond? Okay,
Yes.
Trustees. I agree that the level of effort that Linda outlined for both the mayor and the trustees is considerable, and certainly that it is reasonable for the mayor to be compensated for the time that she spends. I was actually on the board of trustees when we decided to start paying the trustees. The goal behind it was not only to honor the time that the trustees spent, but to encourage recruitment of people for whom giving that amount of time and commitment could really be a financial burden. So it was really intended to help us diversify the board of trustees. I would say we have not yet seen the benefit from that income in that way. I hope we do in the future.
Thank you. And then my final question before your last statements. This is for the answer first. What is your response to the request for street lights at the entrance to Kendal?
Stop sign.
A stoplight. A stop sign, a stoplight. A stoplight. Traffic light, stoplight.
That stretch of North Triphammer Road is of great interest to me as an urban planner and as a person who focuses on transportation. It functions much less like a village street and much more like an arterial road. I would certainly like to add infrastructure that would slow down the speed of traffic and make drivers more aware of pedestrians. I have asked many times for a crosswalk between the bus stops at Texas Lane, and I have been rebuffed every time I have made that request. I don't know that we need a stoplight at this point with traffic levels where they are. Again, with the addition of appropriate scaled interventions such as bump outs, crosswalks, and bike lanes, I think we can bring traffic under control and hopefully make it a little easier to make a left turn when you're coming out of Kendal.
Bump outs would drive the DPW crazy, number one. But in terms, I think a stoplight would be overkill. However, one of the other requests from Kendal has been for a flashing light or one a light that you could press and it would turn red, like the one they have downtown. It's been discussed, and it's sort of in limbo at the moment because we're not opposed to it necessarily, but it would require a traffic study, making sure there were no unintended consequences. And given the way in which Kendal was formed, one of the stipulations was anything having to do with traffic on North Triphammer would be shared by Kendal and the village. And I think both ends sort of stopped talking about it, but it's definitely something that we would be willing to discuss in the future.
Thank you. And now it's time for final statements. And Linda, your final statements is first.
Okay. Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Kendal and all of you for making this forum so informative. I think it's obvious from our answers tonight that Melanie and I have very different styles and priorities. When making your choice, I hope you will weigh heavily my 8 years of proven experience. I have spent that time developing respect and trust with the village staff and strong working relationships with colleagues at the other Tompkins County municipalities, Cornell and Bolton Point. These are assets that can only be acquired with considerable investment in time and energy and are not guaranteed. In the next 2 years, I expect the sidewalk to the school to be completed and the one on Cayuga Heights Road to be well towards construction. The village will also be negotiating 2 critical agreements involving our sewage treatment plant. The first is a plant-to-plant agreement with the city and the town of Ithaca to allow us to continue to send sewage to their plant during severe weather events. The second is the renewal of the so-called Gang of Six agreement with the city and town of Ithaca, the town and village of Dryden, and the town of Lansing, to ensure adequate sewage treatment for all municipalities for the next 25 years. There is much to do. My experience qualifies me, but it is my enthusiasm for the future which makes me want to continue as your mayor. It has been an honor and a privilege, and I hope you give me the opportunity to continue the best job I have ever had. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight, for taking an hour and a half out of your Monday evening to engage with us in this process and to ask some really great questions. Only 73 people voted in the last mayoral election, which was uncontested. That's a 3% turnout and barely registers as a democratic process. So I'm proud that my candidacy means that you have a voice and a choice. And the fact that you're all here tonight, there may even be 73 of you here tonight, and are ready to use it, is something I'm truly grateful for. My hero, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, said, "Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." My fight is to bring our community together, to put transparency and communication at the heart of everything we do, and to have a village where our infrastructure reflects the pride we feel in living here. We're fortunate that our village has the resources to do all of that without raising taxes. I'm asking for your vote so that we can accomplish these goals together. It really does take a village. And I'd like to thank all of you for being a part of mine. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have one final comment to make. Anybody who's new to Kendal and hasn't yet re-registered their new address, nonetheless, you can still vote by affidavit on the 19th. Just come here. I believe the polling will be here in this room. Is that, no, I believe it's as long as you are registered to vote. You can vote by affidavit. Okay, we'll put it on the website. But it's worth coming and voting anyway and requesting you to vote. And I'm assuming your polling place will be in this room. Conference room A.
Thank you. Can I interrupt for just a second? And that is, we have 2 polling places now. We used to just have Kendal, but with COVID, Kendal didn't want us here for obvious reasons. And so we were using the First Congregational Church. This year, both places are going to be open and you can choose whichever one is most convenient for you.
This is, however, only for the village election. Come the primaries and the November elections, I'm not sure whether your polling place will be here or the congregation will change. It's still, I believe, an open issue. Thank you all for coming.